Weirdly, this is the first Star Trek video on the channel, even though we've had the Star Trek logo in our intro since the channel has started. Hello guys, and welcome back to Nerdiness 101. Today I will be reviewing Season 1 of Star Trek Discovery. Now you may be wondering why this review is so late. Didn't the season finish months ago? And yes it did. Now quick story before we begin. I watched the first episode when it came out on Netflix, and then I never got around to watching the rest of the season. Then, I think it was around Comic-Con time, they released a trailer for the second season, and it looked really cool because it involves Spock and Captain Pike, and it looks really cool. So I thought I better watch the first season before I watch the second season, because I definitely did want to watch the second season if it involves Spock, because I love Spock. And yeah, I quite like this show. I know a lot of people really don't like it, but I quite enjoyed it. It's definitely not the best Star Trek show. I'd give that to original series, because it's the best, but it's still pretty enjoyable. But let's get more in depth with it. Now, the start of the season was quite slow. As I just mentioned, I did watch the first episode, but it didn't hold my interest enough for me to watch the rest of the season. But then in, the second episode, Burnham goes to prison, and that was quite interesting, actually. I was like, okay, so our main protagonist is going to prison in the second episode. And as I predicted, she got out at the start of the next episode. Man, they really did a flash cliffhanger on us there. And they get involved in this war with the Klingons. And that whole part of the season, with the Klingon war, I didn't really find too interesting. It held my interest. It was enjoyable to watch, but it wasn't as interesting as the Mirror Universe stuff. Now, I had heard the Mirror Universe was in this show, and that's another reason why I wanted to watch it, because Mirror Mirror is one of my favourite episodes of Star Trek ever. Yeah, the Mirror Universe did not disappoint. It was the best part of the season, in my opinion. And I think it was episode 13. My favourite episode of the show. It's great. They meet a alternate version of Giorgio, and then it turns out that Lorca was from the parallel universe all along, and it is just mind-blowing. And there's that final action scene, and then he dies, and it's great, and then they get back, and they realise that the Klingons have won the war, and that just left me like, oh my god, that was the best episode, it was so good. Now, let's talk about the finale. The finale, like The Flash Season 4, was quite underwhelming. I mean, it didn't feel like a finale. It felt really anticlimactic. Literally, all they had to do to stop this whole conflict was just say, oh, okay, Klingons, we're gonna blow up Kronos if you don't shove off. And they did, and I was like, that's it? That's how it all ends. Okay. It was really underwhelming. But it was all made up for by the ending scene of the last episode. Okay, so they're on Discovery, and they're about to go to Vulcan for whatever they were doing, I've forgotten. And then they come across a distress signal, and they're like, oh, okay, it's a Federation ship. And they're like, what's the code? And then you see the letters NCC-1, and I was like, oh my god, it's the Enterprise. And just from that moment, I was like, Enterprise. Then they just say it, they're like, it's the USS Enterprise, and it zooms out, and then the Enterprise is there, and I was like, oh my god, and I was just sitting down for 10 minutes, just with my head in my hands, and I was like, oh my god, this show is so good. And then I realised, what the hell happened to the Enterprise? Okay, before we end this review, I just want to outline my two main problems with this show. Now, obviously, like I said, it's not the best Star Trek show. I'm not just praising it because it's Star Trek. I can accept when Star Trek things are bad. Star Trek Into Darkness. The first thing, the characters. I could connect with none of them. Honestly, they were some of the worst parts about the show. Sometimes they could be really good, and other times they were bland and the acting was awful, and I just didn't like any of them. To be honest, the one that I liked most was Paul Stamets, and even then, I didn't like him that much. The second thing is the design of everything. Everything looks way too sleek and shiny. It looks like it belongs in the Kelvin timeline. It makes absolutely no sense how this comes before the original series. It just doesn't make sense. Also, Klingons, they look completely different. Why have they got the little head spike things? They don't have those yet. If you look at the Klingons in the original series, and then you look at these Klingons, which are supposed to be earlier versions of those Klingons, what happened? Was there like a Starfleet equivalent to a Wall Street crash? Oh wait, they don't have money.
Don't tell me they don't use money in the 23rd century.
Well, we don't.
So those were my thoughts on Season 1 of Star Trek Discovery. What did you think of it? I know this was a very short review, but I just wanted to get my thoughts out on it. And this is actually the first Star Trek video on the channel. I'm definitely going to do more of these, because Star Trek, if you didn't know, I really love. So leave your thoughts in the comments below about what you thought of this season. Please like, please subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Live long and prosper.